In general, I'm very optimistic about people. And my theory is no matter what population of people you're facing, and no matter what task you have, 2% of the people are going to cheat you, or they're going to be lazy, or they're not going to do a very good job. And 98% of them mean well, want to do well, and they're fired up and on your side. How many people spend way too much time getting rules for the 2 and binding the 2 up to make sure you don't get trapped by the 2, and they end up inadvertently stifling the 98? I would argue that no matter what you do, the 2 are going to cheat you and mess with you. I ran call centers. I had 3,500 people in my group. I think 3,000 of them were on the phone in sales or service, some form. Between compensation plans and gaming the system, there was always an investigation going on in that kind of a population. It's just true. If you worry about that, what are you going to do about the people that are there to really kick ass for you? They're not going to do nearly as well. Turn them loose. By the way, put your controls in place, find the 2 in every way you can, and move them out. But the fact is, you've got to show them you care and that you're real and you're going to address things directly. And the 98-2 thing is a very fundamental principle that people will embrace. Still under your people. So I'm talking in an all-hands meeting. I've got an auditorium full of people. I've got a webcast from call centers around the country. And I kept saying, they. Somebody raised their hand and said, Harry, you're a top 4 officer of a Fortune 400 company. Who would be they to you? I flinched. I said, ouch. I think that's a moment of truth for you when you realize that you kind of want to dissociate yourself with some of the stuff that's happening, or you want to say, I'm not this and I'm not that. So you talk about the ubiquitous they. It happens in Washington a lot now. They. Who the hell is they? Well, in many instances, you are they to somebody. Might be a family member, might be somebody in your org, don't know. You are they. And let me tell you, that's a moment that you have the opportunity to say, how am I going to treat this, and how am I going to deal with it, and how am I going to lead? You don't want to be the they that's being talked about poorly. That is not fun at all. Okay, we've talked about leading your business and your people. Let's talk about leading yourself. The third plank. I've had peers. Obviously, I worked for the CEO of Embark, and I had a senior lead team, and some of the people got it, some didn't. Some were good leaders, some weren't. And you could tell that because we anonymously surveyed the entire company twice a year. It cost us a lot of money. We got half of the company's 8,000 responses to questions about how the senior team operates, and it's amazing when you can get quantitative, anonymous feedback. And at the end of the day, it has to do with introspectively looking and saying, how are you doing and what are you leading? It's fascinating. Leading yourself. Always compete appropriately. I have a saying, I tell my kids this. I have a 9th grader, a 7th grader, and a toddler. I got a 21-month-old. That late life baby program, it enables me to still watch animated Disney movies without feeling guilty. It's all good. I know the Life is a Highway by Rascal Flatts so well right now, it would scare you. I've seen that movie 73 times with Lightning McQueen, and I know all the characters. Don't jack with me on that, okay? Always compete. I tell my kids, if it doesn't have a scoreboard, why bother? Why bother? It's practice at that point. Now, this comes from 25 years of working. Did I know this when I was a teen? Hell no, I didn't know it. But my kids, I'm trying to tell them, they just don't compete as much. You need to compete appropriately. Do not cheat. Do not bend the rules. Be fair, but compete. 2 stories. I time myself to work every day. I don't work now, so it's kind of weird. I guess I walk down to the coffee maker. But my organization knew my fastest time. It was 8 minutes and 27 seconds. And whenever I did a webcast, the first question in the Q&A was, have you beaten your time to work? Because I would get in my car, set my watch. I drove 4.5 miles. God love the Midwest. And I would time myself. I had 3 or 4 different routes I could go depending on the traffic and the lights and where I went. And I parked in my spot, and I would stop my watch. And if I ever beat my record, I got out and I would take my briefcase and spike it, and I'd say, it's going to be a good day. We got the record. Started off at like 9:13, and I worked it down to 8:27 before I left. And every once in a while, I post something on Facebook about a new job or a new office I'm looking at, and someone will inevitably send me a note back that says, how far is it and how fast can you get there? Compete. I love competing. Absolutely love it. Appropriately. Appropriately. The other story here is my daughter just turned 13, but before she was 12, we bowl a lot. We're not very good, but it's a great family outing, and she got to use the bumpers. And we were on one of those new lanes that the bumpers come up and down automatically based on who's bowling, instead of the old school where you pry them up and they stay up so the adults get to use them too. All right, she got to use the bumpers. She beat me for 3 consecutive years because of those damn bumpers. I was so irritated by the bumpers. I kept telling her, Madeline, when you're 13, the bumpers come down and I'm going to kick your ass. We're going on your birthday. And we're going 3 out of 5. And it's done. It's over. The bumpers aren't going to work for you anymore. And she just proceeded to beat me with the bump. I mean, she throws it over here and it bounces 3 times and knocks him down. It's just wrong. It's just wrong. But we were competing appropriately, and I said, all right, those are the rules, but the rules are going to change. I own her now. It's kind of sweet. She won't bowl with me anymore. The second one in our family, very straightforward, is own your stuff. Stop the whining. Stop the excuses. Oh, my gosh, whatever your stuff is, I don't care what. It doesn't matter to me what your stuff is. If your stuff is your sales quota, fine. If your stuff is your relationship with a peer or with a boss or with the corporate marketing department, own your stuff. Figure out what your stuff is and own it. None of this, oh boy, if it wasn't raining, I would do this. Or if, gosh, Susie, she's just kind of a pain in my ass. Dude, own it. Take it on yourself. Ask yourself, no whining. We don't need whining. We need problem identification and solutions. Own your stuff. This is, if you're a boss, this is the beautiful thing. When people come to you with a problem and say, by the way, we got a couple of options here, and here's my recommendation on how to handle it. That's a way lot easier than them coming to you and saying, wow, here's my bag of garbage. Could you solve it for me? Own your stuff. This has to do with leadership. That's why I say leadership isn't standing in front of folks and saying, here's the direction we're going. Leadership is a broad range of skills. It's a broad range of activities that have to do with getting to success. Own your stuff. The bottom one, set the standard. This is about yourself. Action will swamp words. Another thing I'll tell you about. I'm standing in front of my organization. I didn't know this would happen. This was 4 or 5 years ago. Both of my kids were in elementary school, so I was still cool. They got to middle school. Dad, you're done. I drive 4.5 miles to work, and their school is on the way. Once a month, I went and had lunch with them. So I'm working for the CEO. Every once in a while, he would call me, and he'd say, what's that noise? I said, I'm having corn dogs with 94 fourth graders. And I would say, do you need me to step out? And he goes, wow. No, you can call me back. I said, cool, I will. I had a question in front of the all-hands meeting. And it was about work-life balance, and I got very emotional. I said, I refuse to answer the question. It's completely irrelevant, that question. This is so personal. My family is so much more important to me than this job. It is not. They're not even on the same plane. But that's my decision. And I told them, I'm going to go to lunch with my elementary kids. That's what's going to happen. I made that decision. I didn't ask my boss, and I said, do what you want. And I'm truly telling you this, do what you want. I didn't realize it, but when I left that job 2 years later, like a dozen people came up to me and said, it changed my relationship with my job and my family. And at first I was kind of happy, and then I thought, that's a little sad. You got to define that relationship. My work, I didn't have any words that mattered about work-life balance. It had to do with what I did. They said, you gave me permission to go to elementary school and eat corn dogs with my kids because you did it. I said, wow. And everybody knows the story of the person with the open door, but they're never available. Yeah, the door's open. Got that. But every time you step in, they're like, oop, too busy. Could you come back? But the door's open. Yeah. Right with you on that one. That doesn't do any good.